Yep.
Okay. And then I will start this with prayer, knowing that there is only God. There is one power, one force, one essence that is everywhere, in everything, through everything. God. And God is right here, right now, in and through and as me, through in and through and as each of us here. It is who we are. It is moving through us always. And I know that that power that is God is with us, expressing through us as we go forth in this meeting. It comes through my words. It comes through the feelings that we feel into the essence that is God. It is with us. And so I know that this time that we share together is blessed in every way, that it is perfect, that it is complete. And I give thanks for the divine unfolding right here and right now. And so if you're in agreement with me, you can say with me, and so
So it is.
So it is.
awesome. So essentially, when Diane said, I'm not going to be able to do this, would somebody do it for me, take over for me? I thought to myself, well, you did the talk last Sunday in Tulsa, and it was on prosperity. It was the last talk of the month on abundance. The title from home office, A Bun Dance. And in my mind, when I saw that, I saw Pillsbury Doughboys kicking things on their on the line, as they do like a Radio City Music Hall where they're all dancing together.
Put Pillsbury Doughboys in a line dance.
Yes. So it was a bun dance. That's the picture that came into mind. So, I don't know whether that's what home office had in mind or not, but that's what I got out of it, a bun dance. And then I thought, I read the material for today, and it talks about 3 points. And I don't know that they're necessarily, to me, they're not in the right order. But here's the 3 points. The first one was that Jesus knows abundance because he did the whole loaves and fishes thing. He took the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fishes from the little boy and blessed them, giving thanks for them, and then started tearing them apart and then fed the 5,000 people. And when they were through, they had something like a dozen or 19 or 20 or some huge number of baskets of food left over. So the first part was Jesus knows abundance. And the second part was children have the faith, because the little kid wasn't surprised at all that Jesus could take the fish and the bread and make it be enough for everybody. He just believed it. And according to Ernest Holmes said Jesus wanted somebody like the child who had the faith to believe with him, that made it easier for him. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's what I got out of the reading from what Ernest Holmes said. And then the last piece was that gratitude, that he always started with gratitude. That Jesus started with gratitude every time he did any kind of miracle. He started with gratitude. Well, I will tell you, I agree with that we should start with gratitude always. We should be grateful for everything that comes into our lives, every single piece. And as we grow and become more aware of who we are, of what our divinity is, we move from that place of I can't do it to the place of infinite potential that resides within us. So instead of being impossible, things become I'm possible. It's the same word letters, but slightly different essence with it. So we become that. in the material was a picture of Jesus standing there before the crowd. There's a whole big crowd of adults. They're all standing there on what looks like sands. Jesus is on a rock. There's a little kid there. And he's holding out loaf in one hand, fish in the other. And somebody in the crowd says, I can't eat that. I'm vegan. Somebody else in the crowd says, has that fish been tested for mercury? Third person in the crowd says, is that bread gluten-free? Just goes to show that we would probably, if Jesus were to walk in the door and say, what miracle could I do for you today? We would go, do they know you're here? Do you have a license to do miracles? We would be skeptical about it. That's not childlike faith. I'm telling you, that's not. But if we can go there, we can make strides in who we are. So as I was reading this material, I saw the childlike faith piece, and it made me remember something I got out of A Course in Miracles experiment that I thought came out of the book that Pam Grout wrote, Course in Miracles experiment that she wrote, based on the Course in Miracles. I thought the anecdote came out of E Squared. So I went looking for my copy of E Squared. And in that weekend before last, I reread the whole book. And I think if you haven't read it in a while, you should reread it. I'm making the assumption that you have read it because it is obviously one of those books, and it's easy to read. It's big print, short chapters. The idea is that it's 12 or 10 or 9, I think there's just 9 experiments that we will do to prove that we have the same power that Jesus had. So she starts that book at some point in the beginning that she's going to Suellen after a big breakup. And the second night she was there, she met a handsome former surfer who convinced her to spend the evening listening to the waves crash against the shore. And they fell asleep in one of the massage rooms, huddling together for warmth, which didn't work very well because it was really cold on the coast of Washington or wherever Suellen is, Oregon, Washington or Oregon. Anyway, the next morning when the light came up, the day started, they realized that right next to the mat where they had been shivering was a space heater that they could have used to keep warm. And she uses the story to tell us that there is a space heater, an invisible force that is constantly available for us to use, but we haven't bothered to turn it on. So if you're hearing my words, you're probably one of those who believes that this force is there for us to use it. So why don't we? We don't really believe it, not fully. Most of us are operating out of the mental architecture of our ancestors. We think we're running our own lives. We think we're affirming our intentions and creating new possibilities. But in reality, we are just rerunning old tapes, reliving our automatic behaviors, which we learned when we were about 5. We put our positive thoughts in a struggle against old disempowering programs. And guess which usually wins? Neuroscientists tell us that 95% of our thoughts are controlled by our pre-programmed subconscious mind instead of actually thinking. 95%. Arg, that's a lot. So if you haven't done it in a while, check out E2 from the library and reread it. Or if you've got it on your bookshelf, pull it out. It's full of examples of how you can recognize this power that we all have. And when you begin to recognize it, you can begin to use it. We all have the power and we can use it in innately. We do use it innately. If you go outside in the winter with wet hair, you will catch a cold. Now, according to science, that's not true, but that's what I grew up with. And I could make that happen anytime I went outside in the winter with wet hair. Pam gives this example. A few years ago, I decided to spend a month in Australia. A chiropractor I had a huge crush on had just taken a job there to work with Aborigines. How, I wondered, were we going to fall in love when I was in Kansas and he was 10,683 miles away? One look at my bank statement would have convinced any reasonable person that a $1,500 plane ticket to Sydney, the going price at that time, was out of the question. But I wanted to go, and I was lucky enough to know about the field of potentiality that could make that happen. I started planning the trip, began picturing myself romping through the Sydney surf. I mean, I really got worked up over this picture in my mind. Within a week, the editor at Modern Bride magazine called. I know it's late notice, she began, but is there any way you'd be willing to go to Australia to write a honeymoon story? We'll pay extra. Well, okay, if you insist. She goes on to say, you could transform energy to heal and change your body. I was hiking with a friend in the flatlands near Steamboat Springs, Colorado, climbing up the one path in the entire park that went uphill. She tripped over a rock and fell and watched in horror as her ankle started to swell. I mean, this ankle swelled. It wouldn't have been a problem if this had happened next door to a free clinic. But keep in mind that the two of us were 70 minutes if you walk fast, and she couldn't do that because she was limping, from the nearest phone connection, let alone a free health clinic. I told her to direct her body to quit swelling, and she started yelling, stop swelling, heal, stop swelling, heal. I remind her it's okay to say it quietly. We made it back to camp, and she never even had to see a doctor. Completely healed. The minute we make our intention, we create it. It's instantaneous. It exists as an actual thing. We don't see it yet because we're still operating from linear time. We're still sold on the old adage that creating things takes time. So we keep working hard, waiting, and perhaps following the 7 steps from the latest self-help book. But physicists, tell us that things in the quantum world do not happen in steps. They happen immediately. So the thing we intend exists the minute we intend it. But like Schrodinger's cat, we're only aware of the reality we choose to observe. Pam Grout says she likens the whole consciousness to a giant skyscraper. I may be living on the 2nd floor, but the thing that I created is up on the 17th floor. And until I can get to the 17th floor, it appears that it is still missing and I'm still waiting. Everything is right there. Once I bring my consciousness back to the timelessness of now. We need to focus our full attention and be willing to perceive nothing else and fully expect it to be there. Childlike faith. It doesn't question. Children believe in the magic, that all things are possible. They expect miracles. They have yet to be conditioned to the dream of the outside world, lacking limitation. They look at life with wonder, curiosity, and joy. The boy in the loaves and fishes story had the faith of God when he handed Jesus his meager amount of 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. So that's the story that made me go looking through E squared in the first place. And here's the miracle that brought that to mind. Michelle is a single mom, 2 little boys. After reading E Squared, she encouraged her boys to focus on what they wanted each night when they went to bed. When her older boy was 6, he announced he wanted a turtle. And I couldn't back down, she said, from what I'd always told them. And I didn't want to put any doubt in his mind, she told me. But what was I going to say when he didn't get his turtle? After I'd been harping about this asking and believing thing. She kissed him goodnight, but as she turned her back, she immediately started worrying. How was I going to explain when this didn't happen? Around 10:30 p.m., there was a knock on her door. It scared her silly. She cautiously went to the door and peered through the window, and it threw her off when she saw her girlfriend's cousin's husband standing there. Did you get that? Girlfriend's cousin's husband? And he didn't have a very good reputation, and they had never even talked to each other. But curiosity won over, and she opened the door. Very sheepishly, he stammered and finally just blurted out, "Sorry if I startled you, but I work maintenance for the county golf course, and I just found this turtle, and while driving home, something told me that maybe your boys would want this." I was dumbfounded, she said. We were not on his route home. He had to go out of his way. She continued, "My son was not at all surprised. Of course I got a turtle. That's what I asked for." But to her, it was mind-blowing and proof that we should always have the faith of a child. Awesome. So for the last 3 weeks, I've been having an early morning prayer session with a friend for unexpected income. The first week, I arrived home on Monday to find a letter from Social Security saying they had discovered they had been paying me too little. And that not only was I getting a $9 a month raise in November and December, but also a check for $84. Prayer Monday morning, letter Monday afternoon. The second week went by, and I didn't even find a penny on the ground until I was going home from church on Sunday. And I said to myself, I'm not planning on going anywhere for the rest of the day. It'll be interesting to see how Spirit gives me unexpected income. There's no mail on Sunday if I'm home alone. Just a couple of hours later, I got a call from a friend who said they were donating $1,000 to Inner Journey. If you noticed, the first thing Jesus did every time he did a miracle was to give thanks. To me, that's the most important part. If we give thanks first, we can expand our awareness, because what we are giving thanks for is what we're focusing on. And that feeling of gratitude expands, and we get more of what we're focused on. Pam Grout said that for years she hung a calendar beside her bed, plucking it down from time to time to jot down important events, or to look back for the date when she cut her hair, or she met so-and-so, or she went to the dentist. So one night she grabbed the calendar a little too eagerly and pulled out the small nail that secured it to the wall. She said she got down on her hands and knees to search. How far can one little nail go, right? She looked and looked and looked. Apparently, this little nail had secured a Harry Potter style invisibility cloak, and it was nowhere to be found. She finally concluded she'd spent enough time crawling around on the carpet, and she would just send out an intention for it to show up within 24 hours. So the next morning when she woke up, the nail was in her hand, nestled between her thumb and her forefinger. In her hand. She tells a story also of guinea pig B. When the late, great R. Buckminster Fuller was 32, he decided to conduct an experiment to see what one penniless, unknown individual might be able to do on behalf of humanity. Calling himself Guinea Pig B, he dedicated himself to bring about change in the world. At the time he started the experiment, he was what you might call a nobody, bankrupt and unemployed. He had a wife and a baby to support. His first child, the baby's older sister, had just died, and he'd been drinking heavily. His prospects didn't look promising, but he decided to cast aside the past, to give up limiting thoughts. He wanted to know, what could one person do to change the world? So for the next 56 years, he devoted himself to this unique experiment. He took risks. He asked, what if? Not only did he become an architect, an inventor, an author, and a great leader of men, but between 1927, when they launched this experiment, and 1983, when he died, he wrote 28 books, received 44 honorary degrees, registered 25 patents, and literally changed the way humans see themselves. Also in E Squared.
Who was that person?
R. Buckminster Fuller.
Oh,
You can Google him. He's done a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
thank you.
She goes on to talk about being broke. Now, let's take being broke, for example. Most of us can agree we don't want to be broke. So what do? We devote our minds to avoiding it. We work long hours. We call our stockbrokers. We read books and articles about getting rich, fully ignoring the fact that by trying to get rich, we're devoting our minds to the idea that we're not already rich. Consequently, we've decided in advance to be broke. If we simply devote our minds to feeling rich, to being grateful for the already apparent riches in our lives, say our families and our wonderful friends, being broke would disappear. We only experience it because we devote our thoughts to it. That's how powerful our minds are. She talks about a friend who, his name's Don, and he wanted a Martin guitar. And Martin guitars start at $1,100 and go up. Probably by now they start at $2,500 and go up. And while he didn't really have the cash, he made the intention to own a Martin guitar. And he didn't do anything. He just kept believing that one of these days he's going to get one somehow. Nearly a year after he started thinking about the guitar and actually putting it in his mind as his, he got a message from his mom. Your dad just picked up an old guitar at a garage sale for $5. It could be a toy for Daisy. Well, that old toy for Don's daughter, Daisy, was a rare 1943 Martin 00028, one of only 100 made of that model. The same guitar Eric Clapton plays, worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000. He paid $5 for it. It seems Daisy will have to wait to inherit the guitar from her father. She's not going to get it as a toy. Abundance is not something we acquire. It's something we tune into, according to Wayne Dyer. And you've heard, I'm sure, ask and it shall be given. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you.
Can you say that Wayne Dyer quote again?
Abundance is not something we acquire. It's something we tune into.
Ah, true. Right. Thank you.
Okay. And Meister Eckhart said, if God seems far away, who moved?
Mm.
In the book, E Squared, was the story of Paramahansa Yogananda, who was 25, when he was 15, he was sent to the Indian city of Brindaban with no money, with nary a rupee. He'd been yammering about wanting to quit school and devote his life to God, and his brother, Ananta, a solid accountant, pulled a fast one on him. Okay, he challenged, you want to do God's work? Fine, but forget your inheritance. Why don't we put your vaunted philosophy to a test in the tangible world? I'll buy you a ticket one way to Brindaban. That's where Lord Krishna first displayed his glories. Take no money, no food. You can't beg. Let God provide your food and your return trip home. You're not allowed to reveal your predicament to anyone. And if you return before midnight without breaking any of these rules, I'll give you my blessing and become your first initiate. Ananta undoubtedly smirked as he sent his penniless brother off to the strange city that he'd never visited before, but not before searching for a hidden stash. Shouldn't we take a couple of rupees as a safeguard? Pleaded the friend that had agreed to accompany him. At least then we could telegraph home if we need to. Paramahansa rebuked his friend, refusing to proceed if he took such a safeguard. As the train rumbled to the holy city, the friend started whining. I'm getting really hungry. Why did you talk me into this? Right before the last stop, two men stepped into their compartment and began joking with the young boys. As the train pulled to a stop, they linked arms with Paramahansa and his friend and led him to a horse cab. Long story short, they ended up at an ashram, taking the place of a couple of princes who last minute had to cancel their lunch plans. They were not only served a 30 course meal while being fanned by a hostess, but they visited Madana Mahana temple and other Krishna shrines and were given train tickets back to Agra and fed a dinner of the finest Indian sweetmeats. Was Ananta ever surprised when, just a few minutes before midnight, the young yogi walked into his home with piles of rupee notes bursting with stories? His brother, as promised, insisted on receiving a special spiritual initiation that very evening.
That's a nice story.
Nice story.
Yep. I have a couple more. At a workshop in Austin, one of the participants in Pam Grout's workshop told her about the time she casually mentioned, my lawn is out of control. I just wish someone would come over and mow it. 15 minutes later, she heard a lawnmower outside revving its engine. She looked out her window to see one guy mowing her lawn, another with a weed eater. She had no idea who they were. There was no sign on the truck, no notice of why they appeared, and she never saw them again. They did a fabulous job of executing the very thing that she wanted. It's like, okay, that's cool. And the last story, no, it's not the last story. Yeah, it is. Maybe. Yeah, it's the last story. Had to do with plumbers. Six local plumbers were lined up outside my friend Benita's rental apartment. They were shaking their heads and ruining the fact that the serious clog in apartment 5A's water line could not be fixed for less than $8,000. And that's if they were lucky while they were digging up the drainage pipe. One after another, the local plumbers unanimously agreed that there was no other solution. $8,000 was the rock bottom bid. Benita might have bought it, except that she didn't budget $8,000 for that month's repair bills. So she decided to think about it one more day. She decided to let the dude reveal an answer. The dude is Pam Grout's words for God. She decided to do what most of us do. She asked for a miracle. What most of us forget to do. She asked for a miracle. The next morning at a meeting in Kansas City, Benita asked colleagues for suggestions, and one plumber's name came up repeatedly. Why not? She shrugged. So what if he charges extra to drive from out of town? She explained her situation and told him what his fellow plumbers had all concluded. I can do it for less, he said. In fact, I'm so sure I won't even charge you travel time. He walked into the apartment, and within an hour, the $8,000 problem was fixed. Bonita's bill was $200. Despite what the locals stuck in the old reality plumbers say, it pays to know that there's always a different reality when you get out of town. We have that power within us. We have it. We just need to tune into it. We need to relax and let it go. Let it be there. Put it out there, like the woman who said, I just wish somebody would mow my yard. Or the way that I thought, I don't know how Spirit is going to come up with unexpected income when I'm not going to go anywhere to even find money on the sidewalk. And yet, Spirit had a way for that to appear. It's there. We have the power. All we need to do is tap into it. Sometimes we need to follow our intuition. And that's the answer we see, that it's there inside of us. Comments, thoughts, or questions? I mean, I came up with all these stories out of this thing because I went looking for the one about the turtle that I could remember. And there were several more that I didn't write down, as you can imagine. So I reread all of E squared, and I'm now working my way through E cubed because there's good information in there. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't redo all of those experiments, but I'm thinking that maybe I want to at some point. Those experiments were helpful back when they first came out. I'm thinking that they would help remind us, if we do them, to keep track of or be aware of the power that we have. That is who we are. Comments, thoughts, or questions? Examples or stories from your life on how abundance can show up. Yes, ma'am.
I'm grateful that you've brought up this book again, just to remind me that it's a really good thing to reread. So I'm glad that I will. That was a great talk and all the stories. And I was thinking about how, I don't know if it's just, I mean, even with our training, maybe it's just the way the culture is right now, because I can think about things that I wish were different or want to change or want to bring into my life, and it doesn't show up the way it just doesn't show up. And I realize, what am I blocking, or am I still controlled by that those thoughts of stories when I was growing up, and what kind of like the law was in the house, that there was no money and there was nothing for us. So it's good to reread these stories. And then right at the end, it reminded me of, the book by Florence Scovel Shinn, The Game of Life. There are so many stories in there.
Yep.
They're similar, and it's fascinating. I had a friend in Salt Lake that would give that book to every new person he met that came into the church. He would buy them by the box and give those books away.
And which book is that?
The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn.
The last story is from that book.
Oh, well, I'm going to reread E Squared. Thank you very much.
Sweetie pie.
Cool.
Oh, everybody has all these cute, loving little pets. Mine's just all sound asleep on a little
Oh.
blanket.
Oh.
Mine are all
know.
sound asleep too. They're stuffed.
I did have one story that I could share.
Okay.
When I bought my first home as a single person after my divorce, I ended up getting, and I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I ended up getting a loan that was an ARM, what they call that, just
Adjustable rate
adjustable
mortgage.
rate. Yeah, that's what I got. But I got into the home real easy that way. And then it's started to go up. And I thought, oh my gosh. And then one day there was a house payment due, and I didn't have all the money for the mortgage payment this one month. And I knew it was coming up, and it was like, what am I going to do? And I was in practitioner training at the time. So kind of put everything into action in my head. And then I just, all I could do was kind of let it go and trust. And right before the due date, and towards the end of the month, I got a letter from Wells Fargo saying that something had changed. Now I don't remember what it was. I don't know if the rate had changed and gone down or whatever, but they decided they owed me a refund of exactly the amount of my mortgage that month.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my
And I was so stunned and so surprised. I literally fell to my knees. I mean, I was like I could not believe it.
God.
It was amazing.
Yep. I have a story that works exactly the same, but the opposite direction. When Mike and I were first married, we went to buy the first house together, and he had lousy credit. So I was buying the house in my name, and we're working with a mortgage company all the way through. And all of a sudden, maybe 10 days before we're due to close, I get a message on Friday afternoon to call the mortgage company. And it was Friday afternoon. I was at work. I was busy. I did not call them. And then on Monday, when I called back, they were out of business. So it was like, how am I going to we're supposed to close on this house in now 7 days or 8 days, 10, whatever it was. How am I supposed to do that? And so I went to the credit union, and I danced through hoops, but there was the same, it got done with no trouble at all. So when I'm buying this house now on my own, buying the house on my own, and I've got the first bank said, oh yeah, we'll guarantee that. Well, the theory was we were going to sell all the houses, and then there would be more than enough money to pay for this one. That didn't happen. And then we got through a little bit closer to the closing date, and then the same kind of thing happened. The lender all of a sudden backed out. And it's like, okay, now what? So it's just like, okay, God, if this is supposed to be mine, it'll all work out. And sure enough, somebody else came up with the real estate agent came up with a lender who walked me through the steps, and it all turned out exactly the way it was supposed to. But there was quite a bit of angst there. And I can remember thinking at some point, wonder if this one will turn out as good as the last one did. First was, will it turn out as bad? Will the lender fall away? And then it was, and the lender did. And now, is it going to turn out as good? And it did. So it was crazy, but okay. Both directions, using
Crazy.
past experience as being the pieces of it.
So true.
Yeah.
Sorry, my audio is the only thing working tonight.
Well, we're
Hi,
glad
Kevin.
you're here anyway.
I am here.
We can't see you, but we can hear you. Thank you.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
Good.
glad to hear you.
Thank you. Glad to see all of you.
Oh, you can see us, huh? Well, okay.
No, I can see all of you. I can see and hear. My for some reason my computer in the Zoom, the link that I used did not let me connect through, even though I logged off a couple times to get my computer camera working.
Yep.
So it's right and perfect, whatever. As you all know at this point, I'm have I practiced and learned and became a master manifester, and I still am. And it's something that when we learn it, we have to remember not to forget it and not to go to sleep and how powerful we are. Um, at this point in my life, I create almost every day. And sometimes it's okay to just let go and see what happens. And sometimes not being too specific with details. But then there's other times when being more detail oriented gets you more of what you actually want. When you're willing to say no to something because it's not quite right, and you just say, no, that's just not quite right, and keep going, something better is coming up. A small example is I've been wanting a round dining room table for my new house. And it's just like this obsession I've had. I had one in Florida when I was down there and I left it behind, of course. But I wanted something that was at least 56 to 60 inches around so I could set 6 to 8 people at dinner at a round table. Round tables are so much better for conversation at a dinner party. So I've been looking and looking and looking and looking, and different ones have come up, and they've all been okay, not exactly the styles I wanted, or certainly not the price I was willing to pay. And then day before yesterday, I happened to be on Facebook and a new table popped up, and the guy wanted $40 for it. Solid oak, 56-inch table, been painted, over 100 years old.
Wow.
But the cool part about it was the base has a round base, but it has claw feet. But then above each one of the four feet, there's this very large, the size of a small cantaloupe, lion's head on each
Oh, how
leg.
cool.
And it needs to be redone as far as painted and whatever I end up doing with it. And I'm going to strip the black paint off the top and bring back the wood grain. But I'm going to keep it in the darker finishes and the gold that where the lion's heads and everything were in some form of gold paint. And I'm going to redo that, I think, and leave it in some kind of gold or metal finish. But it was perfect. And I was like, great. Didn't say anything about the price because it was $40. I'm like, yes, that's perfect.
Hey.
Drove a half an hour to get it. The guy was really cool about being there. He's an older guy. And Brian and I get there to pick it up. And he's like, I try to give him the $40. He goes, oh, no, you can have it for free.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, no, you said you wanted $40 for it, and that's fine. And he goes, no, I was going to just list it for free. So long and short, I still gave him the $40. I'm like, no, because I was so happy just to have that table, and the price point and everything was just phenomenal. But
Sure.
had I bought a couple of other ones that I'd looked at and I kind of hesitated on, I almost paid $150 for one, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted. It would have been fine. It would have been okay, but it wouldn't have been this piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the right and perfect conversation piece with these giant lion heads on the feet. And it still has the original wood wheels. The little wood wheels under each one of the feet have wood
No
wheels.
way. Oh, that
Like
is
nothing on it is broken. I'm like, oh my gosh.
wow.
So sometimes manifesting, you can say, oh, I want a car, and you're not specific, and some car will come along. And of course, you won't turn it down. But I've learned that if you hold out sometimes when it's not right and just don't jump on the first thing that passes by, you end up with the right and perfect thing.
What a beautiful story.
That
Oh.
also goes with relationships.
Yeah,
Because
true.
God knows and Suellen knows, in the time she's known me, and before that, she can only imagine. I passed by a lot of potential relationships before I was willing to commit and have the right one.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't willing to settle. And sometimes, the instant manifesting can happen, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time when you're not willing to settle. But you just have to keep knowing the truth that you can do this. You can create, you can manifest, you can create your experience the way you want it. I'm done.
Okay.
Spoken from a beautiful master
Oh,
manifest.
that was lovely.
It took me a while to accept the fact that I could own that title and that I could hold that title, because for the longest time I wouldn't. But after a couple of conventions that we were at, I was like, oh wow, okay. When you see it, you finally get there, and then it's like, okay, I can accept that.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. I want to see your table.
I don't know if I can do this or not. Let's see.
We can't see you anyway, so you're gonna have to take pictures and
I know.
Right.
I've got a picture of the table base,
That'd be
which
great.
is really
Please,
the
time.
prime part is the table base. So if I take
I don't think
um,
I have it set, don't have it set for share screen, so
Suellen, I sent a picture of it to you on your text messages,
Oh,
and you can blow it up on your phone and just hold it up, and you kind of get an idea of what the base looks like. It's kind of hard to see because it's just the legs, the leg, and the lion's heads.
And you're
Oh.
going to use gold paint on it?
it's
It's already
gold.
got gold paint on it, and it kind of looks cool because it was painted black and gold.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I want to see. I got to lean way close.
I got to lean too.
Well, let me get it where it's in focus.
Oh,
I don't know. It's hard to see, but I'm kind of seeing it, but kind of
I'm
not.
kind of getting the idea.
If you put it on speaker view and then Sue Ellen talk, then her picture will be bigger so we can see what she's got.
I'm sorry. Do what
now,
now?
now do it. You're on speaker. Talk when you're doing it.
Oh, talk when I'm doing it. Okay. Let me put it.
Oh,
Hold it
that's
like this.
better.
If I talk, and there you can see the
Oh, that's better.
foot and the lion head.
Yes, that's much better.
Okay.
Looks really
Could you-
cool. I
Oh,
don't
it
get
does.
it. though. I still
But
don't get it.
Weird.
I don't get where the table, flat part of the table is.
It's on top. It's not in the picture.
Oh,
no,
I
that's not in
see.
the
Yeah,
picture.
he
It
was-
actually wasn't. It was in two pieces when we picked it up. The tabletop was separate from the base,
Nice. Well,
and
congratulations. How
it's so exciting because it's like I wasn't willing to commit to anything else, and then the right and perfect one showed up, and now people are talking about the chairs because I've shown
Right.
Facebook, and people are talking about the chairs. I'm like, nope. People are like making suggestions of what they think, and I'm like, nope. I want something very different and very non-traditional that you wouldn't expect with that table.
Cool.
And
Well, the
the
right
right and
perfect
perfect,
chairs will
the right
show
and
up.
perfect 6 chairs will show up. I
Yes.
need
Yep.
6.
Yep. Awesome. Awesome. All
I
right.
like your story. I like all the stories.
Oh, yes.
They're wonderful stories.
I have Apple TV. I don't know if anybody else has that, but I'm watching one of their shows called Dark Matter with Joel Egerton is the main character. And it's a quantum physics thriller.
Okay.
And it starts off when you're reminded about Schrodinger's cat in the box. And some people, and it can be alive or dead at the same time, depending on the thoughts of the observer. So this show is about somebody making the box based on that. And he can travel to wherever his thoughts and his subconscious take him. And it takes a while to kind of figure out what's going on. And thank goodness, that a couple classes in ministerial school kind of got me into the quantum physics thing, but I've always liked that. I love that stuff. But they have to remind themselves over and over again because they're trying to get to a certain place once they're in this box and they're traveling. And they have to keep reminding themselves that it's their thought and their feeling, even what's in their subconscious, that gets them to the right door where they want to be.
Oh, that is so cool.
And it's fascinating to me. I love this show. But it's kind of the same thing. It's what we teach, right? Thought plus feelings is demonstration. Be grateful first. It's how we do, and all of that. So it's almost like watching this in action, and how synchronistic to me, Suellen, that's your topic tonight, with reminding us how this all works.
Cool.
Lynn, have you seen Doctor Who?
I've never watched it.
That sounds almost identical to that show, the concept and the basic principles, only they use a telephone booth.
Is the newer, what they're showing now, working the same way as the older show?
I haven't seen the new episodes of the newer one, but the older one I've seen a couple of different episodes with a couple of different people playing the lead, and they were very similar. And then also in the late 80s, early 90s, I think there was a show that Scott Bakula was in called Quantum Leap.
Oh, yes, yes.
And that was also because he would keep leaping through different time zones and like dropping into other people's bodies
I
in
remember that.
history. And that was actually kind of cool because it was in the quantum leap idea also.
Yes. I'll go check out the old Doctor Who stuff. Thank you.
All right. I have 6:56. So if this particular session has sparked an interest in donating to Inner Journey, you can tithe or donate via text to 405 337 9739. And the word for tonight is grace. Or you can go to inner-journey.org and donate there. Inner-journey.org. And now I'm going to close this out, and then I'll turn off the camera video.
Well, thank you all for a wonderful session tonight. The stories, the conversation, the sharing.
Welcome. Taking a deep breath, I say thank you, God, for this time that we have shared together, knowing that it is good and very good. It expands our awareness and our consciousness and our very selves in directions that we did not know we needed to be expanded. Or maybe we did know, and we're just glad to be that expanded. Our awareness of who we are grows. And I give thanks for this good happening in our lives today. And so it is. Amen.
And so
So
it
it
is.
So it is. Yay.
And have a blessed Thanksgiving, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Isn't that something?